Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I thought I'd do something floral, and so I drew up something that's kind of like a little blossom cascade. And I'm going to use some of these pretty little multicolored tourmalines that I have a jar of. And so we'll see how that turns out. I think it'll be pretty, and I'll create a little stem for them to be attached to that we can turn into a bale as well. Before we do that, though, I wanted to thank some groups of people. First off, my patrons are my core group of supporters, and I truly value their support. I have two new ones. I have Rebecca and Stone Butcher. Thank you for signing up. I appreciate your support. And I think you'll find that it's a nice group of people over there with a lot of knowledge that you can tap into. And I want all of my patrons to know that I really appreciate their financial as well as their moral support. Thank you guys. You're a good group. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 23,200, which is amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the nice comments that you leave. It's touching when I find out that I've helped someone learn something or do something better. So thank you for that. And thank you also for all of the financial support, such as the Buy Me a Coffees, the Super Thanks, buying merch, my ebooks. All of that kind of stuff really helps to keep my channel sustained. So thanks for that. All right, well, let's get started on this floral project. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. I have a number of different versions of this. This particular one has a gauge to inches to millimeters chart, which I find pretty useful sometimes. There's some other charts on some of the other ones too with different information. What I really like about them though is I keep track of my projects in these, and so I've always got a record of what I've made, and I date it, and I keep, I keep a list of materials that I do for each project there. And so I have a perpetual record of what I've made so I can go back and revisit it. I also like the dot matrix in the background. I think since I started keeping track of things like this, my process has improved a lot. So you might consider getting yourself one of these. I think they're really useful. So here's today's project. I thought, like I said, I was going to do something floral. And so I sketched up something pretty simple. I wanted just kind of cascading blossoms, getting a little bit smaller as they go, not much. And in the back, I'm going to create like a little twig out of, I think I'm going to use some of this 6 gauge half round and taper it down. So I'll probably have to cut a piece about that long, maybe a little bit longer. And spend a while filing it from, from thick end down to kind of a tapered point. I did a few of the bezels. I'm going to put 4 stones on here, and so I did 3 of the bezels in advance just for the sake of time. These are all tourmalines. I bought a batch of tourmalines last year maybe. I've used them a lot this year because I really like them. They're really kind of glowy, pretty. And so I'm going to use, these are all from the same batch with multicolored ones. I have a green one, a yellow one, a pink one, and a blue one. And so that's what I'm going to do with that to give it some, lots of good color. And I made the 3 bezels for those bottom ones. I think these are about 5 or 6 millimeters. But for materials for this, I'm going to use a 22 gauge sheet for the blossoms themselves. And I'm going to curve them a little bit, just kind of dome them a bit. And then mount the bezel on the inside there. The bezel itself is going to be 26 gauge fine silver bezel strip. I started with 3/16 of an inch, which is 4.76 millimeters, and I cut it down to about 2 millimeters, I think, probably. So I wasn't going to need near that height. So we'll go ahead and make a bezel for the green one here, and then we'll start making these things. Like I said, the back piece is 6 gauge half round, which I think is 4.1 millimeters, if I remember right, wide. And as far as the bail on the back, I may do a little hidden bail like I did on a recent one where I just kind of had a piece of flattened 10 gauge square. This is 10 gauge, I think. So we flattened some of that out, and then I made a little, I can make a little bail out of it. I'll have to find the piece that I cut the other day though. So It's over here somewhere. Alright, so let's make a bezel for this, and then we'll start making some of these little blossoms. So let's go ahead and make this bezel, and then we'll get going. Before we do that, let me talk about my process that I generally use. I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. I do occasionally use some paste solder for something at different temperatures. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a dropper bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's their acetylene air torch. It draws in atmospheric air through this little hole around here, these guys. And it mixes that with the acetylene gas in the tip here and produces a nice hot flame. It doesn't have a second tank full of oxygen, so it's not as hot as an oxyacetylene torch, but it's much hotter than a propane or a butane torch. So it's got plenty of heat. It's great for silversmithing. I really like them. Doesn't that just look like a little piece of candy, that tourmaline? Tourmaline's fun because it comes in so many shades, you know. I've never really found any colorful tourmaline. There's a lot of black tourmaline around here where I live. And black tourmaline is called Shorl, S-H-O-R-L. And it's opaque and black and kind of shiny. A lot of tourmaline comes from South America, various places down there. I know there's a tourmaline mine near San Diego, California. And they sometimes allow fee digging there, I think. I always thought that would be fun to try. So I usually make these into an angular shape, like a rectangle or a square. I have better soldering results that way. It's not the only way to do it, but that's how I do it. I have a few pieces of solder sitting here already that I cut when I was making those earlier bezels. Oops. It doesn't take long to solder a little tiny bezel like that. It also doesn't take long to overheat it, as if you're a beginner, you've probably done that a few times. Okay. Just going to round this out. You can also use a bezel mandrel or a jump ring mandrel if you want to do this. If you have one. That looks pretty good. I think we're good on the size. So we'll set that in there for now. And I think, should we cut out those discs first? I think maybe. You could use your saw if you want to. I think I'm just going to use my shears. I get asked about these shears quite a bit. These are Fisker's craft shears, so they're pretty easy to come by. They work pretty well for this, but they wear out after a while because we're asking them to do things I don't think they're probably designed to do. I cut up to 18 gauge sheet with it sometimes. So 22 here is 0.66 millimeters, so it's not super thick, but these cut through it pretty easily. So. If you have a good disc cutter, you could just punch these out with a disc cutter. I could have done that, but my disc cutter is getting a little old. And I have a cheap one. should be able to just kind of this next week I get to go to some gem and jewelry shows down in Denver. Always excited to do that. I always spend far too much money when I do that. First step to getting better is admitting you have a problem, right? I feel like this is going to be a pretty quick project and not terribly challenging. So this may be kind of a beginner to intermediate project. If you've got a little bit of soldering practice under your belt and some bezels. I usually tell people that try and make at least 30 bezels before they get too frustrated, because bezels are challenging. By the time you do about 30, you've kind of ironed out the issues you're having most of the time. Especially if you pay careful attention to what's causing the problems that happen when you're making your early ones. Actually just did a video, if you missed that one, about some common issues that beginners have. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link up there for it. I think it's got some useful information if you're new to this. I don't imagine it matters that much if these are perfectly round, because they're going to be flowers, and flowers aren't necessarily all symmetrical. Okay. So let me find a marker here. Just kind of center it. That's pretty close. Just make a mark wherever there's a 60-degree angle. Oops. You don't have to move things. If you want to, tape it down so it doesn't move. I think let's do this. I'm just going to use my wire cutters, and this is not really what you're supposed to use wire cutters for, but I'm going to snip out a little triangle each of these spots. You could probably make these flowers more detailed if you wanted to, I suppose. I'm just doing kind of stylized. Now I think I might use my little half-round jeweler's file. Make sure I got the pieces out of there. I'm just kind of rounding these off now. I think if you're one of those people who loves sawing, you can do this with your jeweler's saw, I suppose. I'm getting to where I don't mind sawing. I didn't love it when I used to do it, but I've gotten a little bit better at it, so it's not so painful to do for me. That's probably good enough, or close enough. Let's see. One little spot I want to get more. Good enough, I think. Should we do the big one? And then I'll probably do the other two off camera so you don't just have to watch me do the same thing over and over again. However, if you are enjoying this, the way YouTube finds my channel and promotes it is the more likes that I have. So if you're enjoying this, I would be grateful if you would hit the like button before you left. You, of course, if you like to brace your stuff on something like a bench pin, it's totally okay. Some people find that gives them a lot more control. I'm kind of used to doing it out in the air like this. I do brace against things sometimes if I'm trying to get really precise, but right now I'm kind of sculpting, so I'm not trying to get a perfectly straight edge or anything. Alright, and another one. So like I said, I'm going to do these other two off camera, so you don't have to watch me do the same thing. And then we'll come back and we'll dome those, I think, and then we'll mount some bezels in them. And then we'll start doing the little stem part, I believe. Okay, I got 4 little flower shapes. I'm going to dap these just a little bit. Probably, let's start with the little one here. I'm going to get a feel for how this is going to look. Yeah, that'll be nice, I think. I don't think I need to cup it much more than that, probably. We'll do these ones and then we'll make a decision. These two are really close in size. I may file one down a little bit more, we'll see. Let's see how we're... That's kind of nice, I think. Well, let's solder some bezels in and see how it turns out. Okay, one thing I am going to do, because this is curved this way on the inside, I'm going to file the outside of the bezel on the bottom just slightly curved outwards, just in order to make sure that we get a good seam. So I'll try not to get these mixed up. We'll just kind of, not very much, just a little bit. You'd just like me to knock those right off the table, so I have to crawl around on the floor for 45 minutes looking for them. Wouldn't be the first time I had to do something like that. Those make nice little flowers. I never used to make flowers, but for some reason, when I was newer at this, I was intimidated by trying to emulate, natural shapes and things like that. But sometimes it's kind of a fun challenge to make things that look sort of representative of something real. I'll scroll back through my playlist. You'll find quite a few things that are attempts at, creating leaves or other types of plants, as well as everyday objects. Like a long time ago, I did a bicycle pendant. That was kind of fun. I did a tambourine piece. What else did I do? I've done a locket that looked like a book. So I kind of like doing stuff like that. It's fun. Yeah, I'm just going to throw 1 or 2 of these in here. Make sure they're kind of touching the edge. So most of the mass in this piece is in the sheet on the bottom, and since both of them need to get up to 1450 degrees, I'm going to heat the bigger piece a little bit more aggressively because you want them both to reach that temperature. But if you do the bezel early on, it's going to get too hot and melt sometimes. Look like a flower? I think that looks like a flower. Three down, one to go. I thought about tapering the stone sizes down too, but I really don't have the variety necessary to do that and make something cool. I guess I could have picked all one stone, like all amethyst or something like that. I might have been able to do that. So hopefully this doesn't look weird with the centers all the same size. Maybe the colors will make them look different. I'm going to have to decide how far apart these things need to be too. Originally I was just going to solder these together like this, which I suppose you could do, but I kind of wanted a stem behind them. So, alright, so our next step then is going to be to find that piece of half round here. I think let's cut it a little bit longer than we need. I'd rather have just a little bit too much than not enough. So the next step is going to be relatively tedious. I'm just going to sit here and file this into a taper. You could, if you were in a rush, use a belt sander or some other aggressive power tool to do this, but I'm going to do it by hand, I think, tonight. I kind of find filing soothing. A lot of people find hammering soothing, getting out all of that pent-up anger. So this is going to take a while because I'm removing a lot of material, so I'll be right back. So I was just finishing this up, and thinking it might be a good idea to go over to the Dremel and use an abrasive white silicone wheel to kind of smooth out any kind of file marks I left. And then maybe even use a finer one to smooth it out more before we kind of do some pre-polishing before we start shaping it. I need to kind of shape it into an S shape, I guess. And then the other thing I did was I took a piece of this 10 gauge square that I had flattened the other day to about a little bit more than 1 millimeter thick, I think. And if I domed it kind of like that. And I think I'm going to mount it on the back of this as a hidden bail, like that. So we'll have that hidden behind there for a chain to go through. But I'll be right back after I smooth this up just a skosh more. Okay, well, first things first, I'm going to go ahead and kind of try and get this to lay flat on the table here. It looks like I need to have a curve that goes that way, this way, and that way. So I'm going to slide this over just a little bit. I'm going to hold this. I think I'm going to have a little hook going one way, like this way. We'll do that. And then we can start curving this one this way. If you hold it down like this, you can use leverage kind of to get even a pretty thick wire to curve like that. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. And I had a thought while I was doing that. I think in order to get these to sit on top of this nicely, what if I just file on my half-round file again? There you are. So if I just file it like so, there's kind of a linear rounded trench like that. I may have to brace this against something. I'm just going to do this and hold it that way. Yeah, that actually sits up there. I think I might do that on all of these. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. There's probably a number of different ways you can do it. So I think I might use a little hard paste solder here. I never used to use anything but sheet solder, but there are times where this is kind of convenient. What do you think? 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, or 4 out of 4? I don't think that bottom one's on there well. Let's put it in the pickle and see what happens. Well, nothing fell off. That's usually a good sign. Let's try and remove them. Okay, so I thought that bottom one looked a little sketchy. So we got what's called a cold solder joint, which I didn't get either this hot enough or this hot enough, or it's possible that this wasn't quite in contact with that. Let's see if we can give that another try. One thing I meant to do was clean up some of the tool marks I left from bending that sideways before I did this, but I'll just have to use some creative polishing to get in there. So I'm going to pick solder this one. haven't done that during this video, but it is a useful skill if you want to place some solder where in a very specific place. It's what I use most of the time, and if you're interested, I think it's one of those techniques that kind of steps you up a level, so there's a link for it up there if you're interested. The sooner you learn that, the sooner I think you can really start to make some cool stuff. So the real trick to it, if you're curious, is you need to get both pieces up to the soldering temperature before you put it in there. And that first time I did that one, the little piece was up to temperature, but the bigger bottom piece was not, because there's a lot more mass to it. So I went back and did it again. Oops, I did it again. Hey, I should write a song. This obviously needs to pickle, but I think that's going to be pretty cool, you know? I'll clean this up a little bit, and then we'll get that all cleaned up, and then I may set one of the stones, depending upon how long this video is looking. If not, I'll point you towards another link where you can see how I set these. So maybe I'll set one in front of you. So I'll be back in a few. Okay, I've got 3 of these set. I actually used a little bit of tag board, which is this uncorrugated cardboard, with a little disc of silver that I shined up on top to give it a backing of silver. You could have done these open backed if you wanted to. I thought about doing that, but I felt like I wanted to do it this way this time. So I'm going to use the flat side of this as a bezel pusher. Not everybody does this way, and that's fine. If you need to when you're doing this stage, if you want to secure this in some way, it's okay. I know a lot of people use bezel pushers and bezel rockers and things like that. So I'm going to use the rounded outer part here now to burnish the top of that. Alright, well, the last thing I will do is, with a blue fine polishing wheel, I'll probably clean up the tops of these bezels. I nicked one a little bit here, and I can see a spot up here. It's not laying down very nice, so I may need to do a little bit of cleanup on those. But then I'll put it on a chain. Kind of captured what I was trying to do there. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you might have done differently were you to do this. What kind of embellishments would you add? Like I said, I thought about doing maybe some lines going down along the parts of the petal that dip in like that. But I thought I'd keep it simple in this one. So tell me your thoughts, and I'll get this all cleaned up and get some better pictures. Okay, well that was the Blossom Cascade pendant, or floral pendant, whatever you prefer to call it. If you enjoyed that, make sure to hit the like button before you go, and I'd love it if you take a moment and visit my main channel page. I have 530 plus videos now, and I put 3 out per week, one on Tuesdays, one on Thursdays, and one on Saturdays. And so there's a constant stream of new stuff coming out, lots of projects, various skills, and all different levels of skills too. So I think you're almost certain to find something else useful and or enjoyable over there, hopefully both. So watch a few, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and hit the video description down below for more information. There's links there as well. There's some links to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that cool community. the various tiers of membership for that. There's a link to my ebooks if you want to get yourself a guide to either 2023's or 2024's videos. At the end of the year, there will be one for 2025. It's an ebook, and it includes a page for each of the videos that I did in that particular year. And on each page, there's a picture of the sketch I drew, a picture of the final product, a list of materials, a difficulty rating, as well as a bunch of notes regarding the project itself, things that I might not have mentioned in the video, things that I learned from it, whether I liked the project when I was done, or whether I would ever do it again, or whether I would do it differently. All those kinds of things are in there. So check that out. It's a nice way to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips, and a really nice way to support my channel. Finally, there's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks. I sell quite a few of those. I think they're super handy, and that the grid pattern in the background really makes it easier for me to draw and keep track of my projects. So get yourself one or two of those. I think they're useful. And thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.